Quran can be viewed not only as a holy book, but also as a form of structured knowledge, comparable to an algorithm that existed before the formal development of calculation, symmetry, and mathematical concepts. 365 days, 12 months, 23 chromosomes, 145 lives, 145 deaths. Coincidence or a subtle suggestion from the divine? This isn't merely a theory, it's a pattern ready for you to observe. Welcome to Premisa Chronicles, a space where timeless truths are adapted for contemporary audiences, highlighting not just what is true, but what continues to resonate. Here we regard Holy Writ not merely as artifacts, but as living transmissions that are beautifully crafted, logically connected, and gently communicated through the centuries. There are no easy solutions here. However, you will discover something more meaningful. Questions that ignite your spirit and patterns that reveal you're not meant to be a replica or mere coincidence. Whether you're a seeker, skeptic, scholar, or simply curious, this is your place to pause, reflect more deeply, and hold on to what was never meant to be forgotten. Premisa Chronicles, where meaning preserves memory. Long before humans inscribed laws on stones or wrote them on parchment, they communicated through silence, rhythm, and repetition. Before the development of alphabets, they kept track of days, moons, footsteps, and births. When the sacred started to manifest, it did more than convey meaning. It expressed itself through patterns. The Quran is both a book of revelation and a literary masterpiece. It is not only about its content, but also about its form. Each verse, known as an ayah, is more than just a sentence. It is a sign. Some of these signs are not perceived through emotion or grammar, but are revealed through patterns of number, proportion, and frequency. The term day is mentioned 365 times. The word month appears 12 times. Life and death each occur 145 times. Angels and devils are mentioned 88 times each. Man and woman appear 23 times each. This world and the next are referenced 115 times each. Coincidence? Possibly, or perhaps not. Ancient wisdom viewed numbers not merely as neutral tools, but as divine languages. In the Hebrew scriptures, letters carried numerical meanings, which gave rise to the practice of gematria. The Islamic tradition used the abjad system to assign numerical values to letters, thereby establishing a foundation for symbolic mathematics. Greek philosophers, particularly Pythagoreans, believed that the universe's soul consisted of numbers and harmony. When we read the Quran, not only with our hearts but also with an awareness of patterns, we start to perceive more than mere words. We begin to sense a rhythm underlying the meaning, a logic that transcends language. This documentary aims not to persuade or prove, but to inspire a question. Its deeper, more sacred purpose is to evoke wonder and suggest that the same divine voice responsible for creating a harmonious universe also revealed his word in harmony. In an age filled with constant noise and data, we are reminded to rediscover the value of structure. Not all knowledge is loud. Some of it remains silent, neatly organized and waiting, ready for a curious mind to notice and a humble heart to listen. The sun rises quietly, not with noise but with rhythm. Every dawn serves as a silent reminder, you have another opportunity. Each sunset prompts you to ask, did you make the most of today? In the Quran, the word day, yawm, is mentioned exactly 365 times, matching the days in a solar year, neither more nor less. It reveals a hidden structure encoded in sound, maintained through memory, and uncovered through pattern. Ancient civilizations held deep respect for the cycle of time. The Hebrews observed the Sabbath weekly, every seventh day. The Mayans recorded celestial cycles with impressive accuracy. The Greeks saw time as kairos, representing divine moments rather than a straight line. In this quiet rhythm of 365 days, the Quran suggests, the calendar is not merely practical, it is sacred. The Quran does not characterize time as an abstract idea. Rather, it presents it as a form of testimony. Indeed, humanity is in loss over time. Surah 103 verse 1. And also, He made the sun a source of radiance and the moon a light, setting its phases so you can measure years and keep track of time. Surah 10 verse 5. In the age of artificial intelligence, time is now quantifiable, controlled by algorithms. Our calendars automatically update, weeks merge into notifications, and our perception of sacred time is diminished to mere deadlines. The 365 days in the Quran may not merely be data points, they serve as reflections, 365 mirrors prompting, what did you do today? What did you create, forgive, start, or become? Time isn't merely what we go through, it's what we hold in trust. Mentioning something 365 times in a sacred book sanctifies it. Perhaps the real question isn't how many days we've lived, but how many we've regarded as blank pages waiting to be written. Time doesn't simply pass, it revisits, cycles, matures, and imparts lessons. Within the Quran's sacred framework, this rhythm manifests. The word month, shahr, appears precisely 12 times, once for each month. 12 gateways, 12 calls, 12 reflections of harmony. Ancient cultures recognized this pattern long before they could articulate it. The Hebrews scheduled their festivals according to the lunar cycle. Early Christians celebrated the 12 disciples, symbolizing completeness. In ancient Greece, Olympus was home to 12 gods. The Quran also emphasizes this divine arrangement, stating it explicitly. The number of months with God is 12, as stated in the Book of God on the day he created the heavens and the earth. The book here signifies more than scripture. It embodies creation itself. 12 months are not merely human inventions but cosmic milestones, created before the advent of calendars and etched into the sky. In a society obsessed with speed, months tend to blend together. Deadlines, payments, and routines all move rapidly. However, sacred time differs. It demands attention, renewal, and reflection. Each month in Islamic tradition carries significance. Ramadan is the month of fasting and revelation, while Dhul Hijjah is dedicated to pilgrimage and forgiveness. Time transforms into ritual, and ritual becomes a form of remembrance. We don't just pass through time, we are influenced by it. Acknowledging 12 months in sacred writings helps revive the respect for our natural cycle. The true question might not be about the length of a year, but whether we've permitted it to open 12 doors to the soul. Each sacred story portrays a conflict between uplifting forces and those that drag it down, between subtle whispers and clear commands, and between guiding light and deceptive shadows. In the Quran, the term angel, malaika, occurs exactly 88 times, and the word devil, shaitan or its plural shaitan, also appears 88 times. This is no coincidence. It represents a perfect symmetry, serving as a moral mirror within the text. Why does a sacred book frequently mention darkness just as much as it mentions light? Why not overshadow evil with divine words? Since the sacred does not cleanse reality, it exposes it. The most crucial battleground is not outside, but inside. In the New Testament, Paul states, "We do not fight against flesh and blood, but against rulers, authorities, and powers of this dark world, as well as spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Ephesians 6:12. The Quran reflects, "Certainly Satan is your enemy, therefore you should consider him as such. He merely urges his followers to enter the blaze." 88 angels, 88 devils, not to confuse the reader but to awaken them, to remind each human heart that it contains both forces in tension. Every decision, silence, and temptation represents a vote in this unseen war. We inhabit a world filled with algorithms and distractions. However, the most crucial struggle isn't temporary, it's everlasting. This conflict isn't between countries, but within our own conscience. 88 voices of light, 88 whispers of pride, and at the core, you. You are the one choosing what universe to hold in your heart. We enter this world through breath and leave it in silence. Between these two mysteries, we seek meaning, legacy, and belonging. But how can we truly measure a life? In the Quran, the term life, haya, appears 145 times, and death, maut, also occurs 145 times. This isn't to scare, but to emphasize that the human journey isn't a straight path. Instead, it's like a scale hanging between our origin and our eventual return. In scripture, death is seen not as a failure but as a threshold and a continuation. As expressed in the Quran, He is the one who created death and life to test which of you is best in conduct. Surah 67 verse 2. In Deuteronomy, I have set before you life and death. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. Deuteronomy 39. The equal emphasis on both terms goes beyond literary balance. It is about ontological clarity. You were not created to avoid death. You were created to live with awareness of it. Modern society tends to conceal death by packaging and sterilizing it, treating it as optional. However, sacred texts remind us of its presence, not to depress us, but to enrich our appreciation for life. 145 lives, 145 deaths, and in between, the challenge. It's not about how long we live, but about living deeply, justly, and gratefully. Avoiding death doesn't grant us life. Embracing it, honestly and spiritually, does. The Quran's 145 references for each are not warnings but guides. With every sunrise, loss and heartbeat, we are posed the same sacred question. Are you becoming what you were created to be? We walk on dust, yet we dream of stars. We harvest grain but long for what cannot spoil. Humans are born with two homes, one visible and one concealed. The Quran acknowledges this tension without dismissing it. The phrase, this world, ad-dunya, appears 115 times, the same as the hereafter, al-akhirah, also 115 times. This symmetry implies you should not worship either one. However, you should pay attention to both equally, as you were created to maintain harmony between them. In the Bible, Jesus declares, "My kingdom is not of this world," John 18:36. And the Quran echoes, "The life of this world is only play and distraction, while the hereafter is far better for those who are mindful," Surah 6:32. But if both worlds are mentioned equally, they might also be equally expected, not in time, but in accountability. This life is where we act, the next is where we answer. To live fully here, with remembrance of there, is the mark of awakened faith. Modernity encourages us to concentrate on the present moment. In contrast, sacred traditions suggest aligning the present with eternity, not through guilt, but through gratitude. We do not belong to a community defined by despair. We are travelers seeking harmony, those who walk the earth with their gaze set on eternity. 115 mentions of this world, 115 of the next. Remember that holiness is not about escape, it's about integration. They were never intended to compete. Instead, they were designed to mirror. Two names, two lights, one breath. The Quran refers to man, Rajul, and woman, Imra, each 23 times. The specific number of chromosomes is passed down from each parent. This is not folklore or poetry. It's a genetic truth encoded within revelation. In a divided world, this numerical balance carries more weight than sermons. It's not just a footnote of biology, it's a theology of balance. From the Quran, "O humankind, we created you from a male and a female, and made you nations and tribes so that you may know one another." Surah 49:13. From Genesis, God created humankind in his own image. Male and female, he created them. Genesis 1:27. No competition, no hierarchy, simply reflection and connection. The Quran does not pit genders against each other. Instead, it emphasizes their mutual completeness, not competition. It mentions man and woman equally, 23 times each, like two strands of the same sacred DNA. In today's era, discussions about gender often feel confrontational. However, the sacred text provides an alternative perspective. Instead of a struggle for power, it emphasizes a moral partnership. Justice starts at the root, before politics and policy. Sacred texts echo what biology already understands, that balance is intrinsic to design. The real question isn't who is greater, but how we can restore a harmony that was never meant to be disrupted. Before maps existed, satellites orbited the sky, and ocean depths were measured by sonar. The Quran already spoke of the sea and the land, and the words it chose weren't random. The term sea, bar, appears 32 times, while land, bar or ARD, is mentioned 13 times. In total, they are referenced 45 times. The sea is mentioned approximately 71.1% of the time, 32 out of 45, and land about 28.9%, 13 out of 45, 45. A ratio that closely reflects Earth's actual surface distribution, approximately 71% water and 29% land. Coincidence? Perhaps. But considering it's a 7th century oral text, preserved without charts or tools, it's certainly a question worth asking. The Quran considers geography to be meaningful. The sea represents challenge, danger, and surrender. When they voyage across the sea and encounter danger, they genuinely call upon God. However, once He brings them back to land, they turn away. Surah 29:65. The land is secure for farming and living. It is He who has made the earth a cradle for you. Surah 2:22. Together they lay the groundwork for human testing, land representing responsibility and sea symbolizing trust. Modern humans have charted the world, but have forgotten how to view it with awe. We stand on land and observe the oceans, yet do we perceive the balance beneath us? The Quran's proportions may not be scientific assertions, but rather spiritual alignments, reminding us that the earth itself is a sign. Sacred texts often mirror the very planet from which we were created. Not all speech carries the same significance. Some words are mere noise, while others form the foundation of meaning. Long before algorithms, quantum codes, or artificial syntax, the ancients viewed letters as more than just sounds. They saw them as carriers of meaning, embodying form, number, and spiritual significance. In Arabic, as in Hebrew and Greek, each letter was assigned a numerical value. This system, called abjad in Islamic tradition, gave every letter a position within the numerical universe. Not to diminish its sacredness, but to mirror the underlying order behind it. In the Quran, certain chapters begin with unique isolated letters: Alif, Lam, Mum, Kaf, Ya, Sin. What do they signify? Scholars debated this question while mystics wept over their mystery. Today, coders might refer to them as pieces of divine code. The text transforms into a pattern, not random or merely decorative, but rhythmic, deliberate, and preserved. This pattern reveals the core of Scripture. It is more than just speech. It's a system. More than just commands. It's a well-crafted composition. Even the number of chapters, 114, verses, over 6,000, and repeated phrases carry mathematical fingerprints that suggest this was not arranged by chance. Modern AI can analyze grammar, summarize, translate, and optimize. However, it cannot experience awe. Only a soul can truly feel the significance of a letter that aspires to eternity. The sacred isn't always in what's spoken, but in how it's constructed. When letters incorporate numbers and verses flow with rhythm, the message becomes evident. Truth is structured. Respecting that structure is a form of reverence. Balance is not silence. It is the language of eternal wisdom. It manifests in galaxies and grammar, in tides and tears. When Scripture repeats itself precisely, it's not stuttering but sculpting a path for the soul. Throughout the Quran, symmetry is more than appearance. It is essential. Life appears 145 times. Death, also 145 times. Angels and devils, each 88 times. This world and the next, each 115 times. Man and woman, both 23 times. Why has such harmony remained in something spoken aloud for over 23 years, without editing software or numerical tools? In sacred language, structure signifies meaning. Anything unbalanced is unjust, and injustice hinders the unfolding of mercy. Ancient philosophers, from Pythagoras to Ibn Sina, believed that the ultimate test of any truth was this: does this idea relate to beauty, logic, and the soul? Symmetry in sacred text indicates that God is not just mighty, but also intentional, thoughtful, and embodies pattern. We exist in an age that conflicts with symmetry, characterized by greed-driven economies, extremism in ideologies, and truths pushed to the limits. However, the sacred calls us back to the middle ground, not to neutrality, but toward divine proportion. Justice starts not with individual opinions, but with preserving equilibrium. The Quran's symmetrical patterns are more than simple trivia. They serve as a reminder that God creates with consistent accuracy. Similarly, we're inspired to emulate this by shaping lives, relationships, and communities that embody the harmonious form of compassion. Science progresses rapidly, continually calculating, modelling, and refining. It requires evidence, maps unseen phenomena, predicts the unknown, and revises past understandings. However, at times, only sometimes, it arrives too late, after a silence already deepened by God's influence. Today, scientists confirm the Earth is 71% ocean. The human embryo receives 23 chromosomes from each parent. The solar year has 365 days. Neural learning favours repetition and symmetry. Centuries before these instruments, genetics and topography, the Quran conveyed these truths, not as predictions, but as subtle signals woven into frequency, structure and rhythm. The Quran does not present itself as a science guide. It is not a telescope or a laboratory. Instead, it acts as a mirror for understanding, offering deeper insight when you pause and listen beyond the distractions. From the Book of Job in the Hebrew Bible, "Then, where does wisdom originate? Where can understanding be found?" Job 28:20. The Quran responds, "And he taught you what you did not know. God's grace upon you is immense." Surah 4:113. Science is a gift, yet it cannot define what gives life meaning. It can decode the cell, but not the soul. It may measure days, but not sanctify them. The concept of the sacred is considered to exist before discovery rather than competing with it. New doesn't always mean truer, and not every truth requires proof. Some are meant for practice. When science harmonizes with revelation, we're not meant to boast but to bow. Not to the numbers, but to the one who spoke before we could measure. Every number we've counted and each symmetry we've traced were not just meant to evoke awe. Their real purpose was to initiate a transformation. The Quran is more than just a book to quote. It acts as a living code and a sacred text with many layers that connect deeply, not only with scholars, but also with the soul. Artificial intelligence grows increasingly powerful each day. It processes information more quickly, retains more data, and improves its optimization. It simulates thinking, mimics speech, and anticipates behavior. However, it cannot experience wonder. It cannot worship. It cannot weep over a verse it did not anticipate understanding. The sacred code isn't composed of zeros and ones. Instead, it is woven through mercy, breath, balance, and rhythm. It isn't merely informational, it is truly formative. Greek philosophy referred to this as the logos, word, reason, structure, and wisdom. The Quran embodies this same power, but not as an abstract concept. Instead, it expresses itself through acts of patterned mercy, demonstrating that true belief does not mean abandoning logic, but rather understanding it illuminated by the eternal. Following this code doesn't make you robotic. It's about embracing your humanity. He-World doesn't need more data, it needs discernment. The Quran's beauty in numbers isn't about precision, but about purpose. Genuine wisdom begins when we shift from asking, "Can I prove this?" to pondering, "What kind of person does this truth inspire me to become?" And if God counts in silence? We have counted the words, 365 days, 12 months, 88 angels, 145 lives, 23 chromosomes. But now, at the end of these patterns, what is left behind? What if God's goal was never to impress us, but to interrupt us? What if math wasn't about proof, but about invitation? To listen once more, to observe more carefully, to believe that behind each repeated word there's a heartbeat, not just a statistic. In a universe dominated by algorithms and forecasts, we often simplify everything into systems. However, the sacred transcends these boundaries. It doesn't inquire, "What do you know?" but rather, "What are you becoming?" Perhaps the real miracle isn't that the Quran contains all these numbers, but that you observed it. That part of you paused, felt the weight of a word appearing for the 365th time, and wondered, who counts like this? Who speaks like this? Maybe what we are meant to find isn't proof, but simply presence. The Quran is not just a book of verses, it's a field of signs. And some of those signs cannot be explained, only experienced. Next time you observe balance amid chaos or symmetry in silence, don't overlook it. Pay respect. You might have just encountered a number that God softly shared with the world, and your soul is waiting to hear it. If something moved inside you, if the pattern spoke beyond reason, if the silence of the Quran conveyed more than any headline, this journey isn't finished, it's merely starting. Subscribe to Promesa Chronicles, not just for content, but for rediscovered revelations, stories that inspire thought, and truths that come alive. Share this video not to make it go viral, but to ignite a question in another soul, one that can't be found on Google, only experienced. Comment below and share with us. Which number resonated with you? Which symmetry caught your attention? Join the circle because here, we don't follow trends, we follow threads of meaning woven across time. You aren't simply watching a video, you're unravelling a promise, one that was never meant to be kept alone.